Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Game Vortex, and today we are talking about Project Scorpio. Now, we've heard about this console for a while now. It's been announced during the last E3. We've heard rumors and speculations, and Microsoft finally came out recently and said that they're going to officially unveil the specs of this console on Thursday, which is today, and they came out. Well, actually, they didn't unveil it to everybody. They just gave an exclusive interview and showed the things to basically Eurogamer and Digital Foundry. So if you want to know the very technical in-depth analysis, go to the Digital Foundry to watch it on the YouTube channel, or you can go and read it on the Eurogamer. I'm just going to give you the highlights and actually going to talk about a few things that are quite interesting during this reveal. Now, it's very interesting why they're unveiling it right now in terms of the specs, because they could easily do that on the E3. So I have two theories about this. First of all, it's because they already know that they lost against the PlayStation 4 and they have to reset everything from the clean slate, and they know that Sony most likely going to show off quite a lot of exclusives. So they need to not steal the thunder, but they kind of need to have a little bit of momentum building up to the E3. We are just a couple of months away from the E3, so they're probably trying to get the hype going, sort of like Nintendo did with just a teasing thing, and then they're gonna kind of ride this wave onto the stage and continue going from there. Or maybe, just maybe, let's hope so, that they actually have a lot of games to announce during E3 and they want to get all the technical stuff out of the way. So we knew about some of the specs from a while back, from the renders that we've seen and everything else with it, obviously. And over here we have just a quick overlook of what it's going to be capable of, what it's going to be running on. So it's based on the custom-made CPU, 12 cores as usual. It's not Ryzen technology, like, you know, the architecture that's supposed to come out from the AMD's new processors, because that's way later on the roadmap. So it's basically still based on the Jaguar cores that you find in the Xbox One S and PS4 and PS4 Pro, but it's been very heavily modified. They work together with AMD on both the GPU and CPU to make sure that they have this console optimized for 4K gaming. Well, at least that's what we know for now. So yeah, 12 cores running 12 gigabyte of GDDR5 RAM. Same RAM as the PS4 Pro and PS4 using, only this time it's much higher bandwidth. Whereas the PS4, for example, the memory, right? The PS4 Pro is running at 218 gigabytes per second, and Project Scorpio is running 326 gigabytes per second. And if I'm not mistaken, PS4 original is running at 184, 186, something like that. So it's basically pretty much almost double of PlayStation original and significantly higher bandwidth when it comes to PS4 Pro, and that will play in key with their Scorpio engine, as they call it. It's basically a special dedicated hardware that allows for a better trickery to make the games run as 4K. It's not exactly the checkerboard rendering that they used on PlayStation 4 Pro, but nevertheless it's still pretty good. And actually, I think it's actually a superior way to render games at 4K. So 12 gigs of GDDR5 RAM. Don't forget that it actually reserves a part of it for the system, knowing that it's Windows based. Obviously it's going to be at least 4 gigabytes, and yes, actually I can confirm it here. 4 gigabytes of RAM is reserved for the system, so that's what you get is left 8. So that's about 60% still more than you get on the original Xbox. From what I saw during the Digital Foundry's video, they actually said that the Forza Motorsport was running at 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, it's not going to be, I mean, it is native 4K, but it doesn't mean it's going to compare exactly the same as it's running on the high-end PC, simply because they make the game, let's say, you know, if you're a PC gamer, you know you have settings and quality, texture, shadows, VSync, all that stuff. Now, whatever is on the original Xbox, that will be the same settings in 4K. So if it, for example, was running on the medium settings in 900p, it's going to be running 60 frames per second native 4K with the medium settings or the high settings, whatever that will mean. So that's actually how they clarified it. So yes, you know, obviously it's going to support a lot of different technologies. It actually does have the Ultra HD, 4K Blu-ray basically. Screw Sony, you fucked up big time. you just completely, like, this is the reason why I didn't buy PlayStation 4 Pro, is because why? Like, if you're touting this as the next generation fucking 4K Ultra HD HDR support machine, like, why can't you put a flipping drive for the format that you have created? This is just beyond my comprehension. Why? So a lot of work has been done in the last year on Project Scorpio. It's actually coming along really nicely, and they say they're about 6 months away from the release at least. I mean, it might still get delayed, but it still seems like it's going really, really, really well. Right. So they're using slightly different philosophy from Sony's checkerboard rendering to upscale the games with what they call a Scorpio engine. So you can actually go and check out an in-depth analysis on that, because it will take me an hour to go through all of that stuff that they put out, how they do all the assets and how everything is partitioned, and why the special parts of the hardware design is located there and then this. So GPU, now it still seems to be based on Polaris architecture, if I'm not, the RX 480 was it, or 280? No, I think it's, yeah, somewhere along those lines. But here, like, it's heavily modified. It's nothing like what it is in PS4 Pro. It's running a 40 customized compute units. Now the original Polaris 480, I think it was, that has 36 if I'm not mistaken, and the PS4 Pro's 36, but this one is very different. And what is actually very surprising is the clock speed that it's running at. It's running at 1172 megahertz, which for the console is insane. That's actually a lot. Nobody, even Digital Foundry, expected that it's going to be running at such a high clock speed. Memory already gone. Hard drive, they promise a 1 terabyte 2.5 inch. They have not specified if it's going to be removable or not. Let's just hope so. It's also have a higher bus memory, and basically the speeds, the read-write speeds, are going to be higher than what they are on the Xbox One. But if you want to have an SD drive, well, out of luck. Otherwise, that console would cost $800 for sure. What else is going to be like? They had a special, basically, performance investigator for Xbox, the PIX hardware, where I could actually analyze, trace the hardware and everything to see in emulation how the games from an Xbox One will scale to Scorpio before they actually build the hardware, which is quite interesting. I suggest you actually go and that's what they created, that Scorpio engine. Also, there was this ESRAM, if I'm not mistaken, was it? Yeah, ESRAM. So that ESRAM on the Xbox One, it was only 32 megabytes, if I'm not mistaken. But it was so fast. It was much faster than what was on PlayStation 4, and it's much faster than the DDR3 memory that was on Xbox One. So that is gone from Scorpio, obviously. They said that because they had such a low latency memory and basically high bandwidth memory that they could actually, basically whatever they lost, they gained. They could emulate that part. So they allocate 32 megabytes inside that DDR5 RAM, and everything's jolly good there. So yeah, I mean, from the rendering during the presentation last E3, you could see that it had a lot of chips, and those are the memory chips. As I said, it's 12 gigabytes. And I mean, it's insane the amount of work, what I've actually read through and watched, how much work they actually put through in this last year. They're actually serious about making this work, you know. They say that they actually work with AMD very closely on every single part of this. So they ended up with, like I said, 40 Radeon compute units running at 1172 megahertz, right? Comparing to Xbox 853, if I'm not mistaken, was, and PS4 Pro 900 something. So yeah, it's still based on the Polaris RX 480, but it has more compute units. Obviously, they also done a lot of all of other things in that particular piece of hardware that they call Scorpio engine. You know, they added more L2 GPU cache. So basically, they try to chisel this console to handle 4K. And what is more important is that it's going to support, obviously, HDR and things like that, but it's also going to support new audio format profiles like Dolby Atmos. And there's another one that I forgot because I've never actually heard of so far. So it's, yeah, The RAM is running at 384-bit, 12 channels. So that gives us exactly 326 gigabytes of memory bandwidth. So just like they said before in the videos analyzing. So that's quite interesting. It says that the hard drive is 50% faster, increase in bandwidth on the hard drive. So if you want to swap for, let's say, an SSD drive or maybe a hybrid drive, you're actually going to see the improvement. This is my only complaint with the PS4 and PS4 Pro, is that no matter what hardware you put inside, like you could spend like $1,000, $2,000 on a badass SSD and you shave off like a fractions of a second, 2, 3, 4 seconds, which is not a big increase, to be honest, because when you compare it to the hybrid drive, which costs next to nothing, you're only gaining like 2 seconds with an SSD between them. That's not a big of a difference to actually do. So with the CPU diving back again, 8 cores organized in 2 clusters, 4 megabytes of L2 cache, running at 2.3 gigahertz, all of them, not like some running in this, like they usually have it in the mobile phones. And it's what they actually managed to achieve is 100% backwards compatibility with the Xbox One and Xbox One S. And this is great news for them. Now, let's get away. Scorpio is 31% faster than Xbox One when it comes to the x86 processor CPU. Let's go away from the specs for now. I want to talk about something else. What I want to talk about with you, ladies and gentlemen, is what price is it going to be priced out. Now, both Eurogamer and Digital Foundry, they haven't seen anything. Now, all this presentation that was given to them, they haven't seen the gameplay presented during that presentation. They haven't seen the actual hardware. So it's basically like just all the engineers and hardware architects sitting there and just talking to them, answering their questions, doing presentation and stuff. So the hardware is obviously going to be unveiled in E3. We already know that the power supply, thank fucking God for that, no more power bricks. It's going to be built into the actual unit. There's going to be some specific cooling, and I think if they actually want to achieve 4K at 60 or even at 30 FPS, they're going to need that. And what is interesting as well is they said that the 4K native resolution that they're striving for will be achieved not only on the native titles, but also on the third-party titles. That remains to be seen, because 6 teraflops, to be honest, if it comes to the computation like that, is not enough to run, definitely not enough to run at 4K 60 frames per second. I mean, you can take the latest NVIDIA GPU. I'm not talking about those high-end Titan X's and stuff, TIs, and I'm talking about 1080, for example, which has much more. I think it's got 8 or 10 teraflops. It's got much more processing power than this. And even that, you put a Witcher, it cannot hit 50 FPS at times, sometimes dips below that. Some games can actually drop into 30s, It depends on the amount of stuff that is happening on the screen, so it remains to be seen how that works. They said they're obviously going to scale the old Xbox One games on the Scorpio to 4K. But how much is it going to cost? Now, both of them saying, like the Digital Foundry and Eurogamer, $499. I think it's a good price. Of course, it's going to be a bit more expensive than PS4 Pro, but you actually get more for your money when it comes to power, and the power frigs are going to be all over the place. Now, the only problem I have with this is that what games do they actually have to go with it? Because if you only have, for example, 2 big games from yourself, your IPs, which is most likely going to be Forza most likely, Forza Horizon, and you're going to have Gears of War, maybe, or something like that, or Halo. Now, what else do you have there? Because the thing is, we know that Halo and Forza used to be huge franchises, console sellers, but they aren't anymore. The momentum has died. You've seen the reception, the Master Chief Collection and the latest Halo. It's popular, but it's not there. It doesn't sell consoles. It didn't help them to gain some sales against the PS4. And PS4 is killing right now. Like, I was really upset on Sony, because there were years that we had no exclusives. Everything is delayed. Studios closing, delayed. But then we started to hit the stride with Uncharted, then we got fucking other games. Horizon is amazing, love that game. Wanted to sell it, but just can't get myself to do that. And then there's rumors going that we're going to get a Spider-Man this year. I'm sure the God of War is coming soon. Detroit Human. I mean, there is so many games in the pipeline. I'm sure we're going to see a lot more. There's been a great third-party support with the titles like Persona and Neo and Yakuza 0 and things like that. But Xbox doesn't have anything, at least not what we know of right now. And I really, really hope Phil Spencer is going to pull out some really great games to go along both for Xbox One and Scorpio. Now, another issue that I have is that if the game is running both on Xbox One and Scorpio, how are you going to go about working with, usually in this case, the developers are going to develop for the lower console denominator. If it's native title, obviously I understand they're going to go all out. But if it's something that also works on PS4 Pro and PS4, they're going to look on where is the biggest install base. Okay, it's the PlayStation 4, 50, 60 million sold, and even if the Scorpio sells like 5, 10, still, it's going to be developed, chiseled for that console in particular, unless Microsoft dumps a lot of money like they did with Tomb Raider. And it remains to be seen what Microsoft, without games, the consoles don't succeed, right? Nintendo is playing in their own, they're dancing to their own drum, you know? They don't really care about it. So Microsoft is not worried about them. It's what Sony is actually going to do as well. It's interesting. All Sony have to do when the Scorpio hits the shelves is knock off $50 off PS4 Pro. And then you have a console that is not as powerful, but the difference is not going to be night and day. It's not going to be a difference like going from SD to HD resolution. No flipping way. It's not going to be like that. So very interesting. I mean, I'm happy for Microsoft. It means, of course, they are not saying that this is a new generation of consoles, but it is. I don't think, because this thing is more than 3 times powerful as Xbox One. So definitely sounds like they admit that they've lost and they want to start afresh. But just before I go, quick thing, what I have a problem with as well in this case, if you have an ability to play their games on PC, that's exactly what they're saying, is like, why would you buy their console anyway? Like with the Sony games, you can't play them on PC. I mean, the PlayStation Now is coming to PC gamers with PS4 games, but I don't think they're gonna put their latest games like Horizon up there straight away, probably after a year, like 6 months. But the Xbox Play Anywhere program, what is the point of buying an Xbox hardware? Because you can play their exclusive on the PC, so if you already have one, why would you spend money on that? Most likely your PC is probably going to be more powerful than that. So yeah, tell me please if you are excited about the Project Scorpio. What do you think about its specs? And I suggest you go to Digital Foundry and Eurogamer. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please help me grow. I apologize that I haven't been posting much recently, but had a lot of work to do. Now I'm on holiday, so it's going to be great. Please subscribe to this channel. You can click the button on the left or on the right. Leave the comments below. I'll reply to you. And as usual, thank you very much for listening. And I very appreciate that. Thank you.